Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias. This month we are discussing Midnight Mass, the most recent Netflix horror thriller series from Mike Flanagan. Thank you so much for listening. I do truly appreciate it. Please review and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. I know it's been a minute since you last heard from me, and we've had a baby, and I'm working on school and photography, and lordy, who has the time these days. Today, we will be talking about forgiveness, church trauma, and catharsis. Again, thank you so much for listening. I'm looking for help producing my shows. As I said, I'm short on time now, but I definitely don't want my babies, the podcast, to die. So, I'm going to keep recording in the meantime, on occasion when I have stuff to talk about. I do have the first episode of Season 2 of The Lost Letters written, but I haven't been able to record. Anyway, if you would like to help out, please send me a message. Let's stumble through a sandstorm in Israel and hopefully avoid the ancient vampire that we could easily think was an angel for no good reason. For me, Midnight Mass was a bit harder to watch than Mike Flanagan's other work. I don't feel like it was better than The Haunting of Hill House. I would say it's on par with The Haunting of Bly Manor. It was beautiful work. I love how he does supernatural horror as just the vehicle for much larger stories. It was hard for me to watch because of all the hymns used and how well the Bev Kane character was written. I really hated her. Probably because I know far too many people like that. The self-righteous, uncaring shrews. I also think because there were elements of Bev that were me in the past. I see bits of myself in almost all of the characters. I can also see the church trauma that Mike Flanagan must have suffered in the past, as the clarity of these abuses in this work is crystal clear. The death conversation between Riley and Aaron was a beautiful depiction of the conflicting ideas that my brain wants to hold on to. With our past miscarriages, I want to hold on to Aaron's idea of just being sent here to sleep and going back and meeting all of the would-be relatives. And then now, I hold more to Riley's idea of death, of that final dream, and a release of life, allowing new life and recycling of my atoms, which is why I want to be buried naturally under a tree so that I can be a tree. I can't say that I believe in an afterlife anymore, but that's okay. I like Erin's final return to the moment and revising her view, incorporating both views, but adding the love piece. Love and forgiveness are, after all, the themes of this show. I'd say it would be tough for people who have suffered through church trauma in the past to watch. It is cathartic, though, and I think the end was satisfyingly bittersweet, as Mike Flanagan's other work has been as well. He knows how to end a story well. The biggest theme in Midnight Mass is forgiveness. Forgiving yourself and forgiving others. This is laid out by Screen Rant's Jordan Williams. Nearly every single character in Midnight Mass has a clear issue with either needing to be forgiven, needing to forgive someone else, or needing to forgive themselves. The article continues to discuss Riley's actions and touches on one that I want to talk about here. Lisa and Joe's amazing confrontation in his trailer. I think it embodies one of the biggest issues that I still struggle with. The forgiveness wasn't for Joe. It never was Joe. It was Lisa finally letting go of the anger. Forgiveness is not for the forgiven, it is for the forgiver. It is an effort to say that you shouldn't have to carry the pain that they gave you, however long ago, which makes it incredibly difficult if you are the one who is forgiven. Because forgiving oneself is not easy. You hold on to the pain of guilt to keep you from doing something atrocious again and hurting people further. The problem is that if we don't admit to the guilt and pain that we have to carry it ourselves, and without help, we are often prone to getting back into those harmful situations again. We can see this with Joe. Joe couldn't forgive himself, and this was something that made him keep people away and turn to the drink. He couldn't go see his sister. He couldn't get clean, because why? If you're a trash person, why polish it? Forgiveness is how Riley came to realize his dream was his way of moving forward, forgiving himself and his family so that he could go in peace. Did you know that the Mayo Clinic has a full article on forgiveness? I didn't either, but there is an article, a full article on the health benefits of forgiveness on the Mayo Clinic. It doesn't have to be part of any religion at all. In this, Riley talks about rational recovery that he was into. It is just a stress reliever. I fear the pain that I have caused in my own life inadvertently. As a former minister, I feel like I'm guilty of a lot of what I'm about to get into with the church trauma section. I'm not only a survivor, but I'm also someone who caused some things for some, I'm sure. For that, I'm so very sorry for that part of my life. I wish it didn't make me into an energy vampire, much like Colin Robinson from What We Do in the Shadows. I do feel like the symbolism of it, being a vampire, was appropriate. A church community that was sucking all of the money and life from the community before the monster showed up and made it blood-sucking. As I look back at my former career and my experiences within the church, I'm still even hesitant now to say this, but I found many of those places were sucking the life out of people. People were so afraid of their own mortality or their afterlife that they just didn't live, which, if you study other religions, is the whole point of religion. Religion is there to help clarify and make life better, not to take it away from you. Hell, even Jesus said, allegedly, "I've come that you may have life and have it to the fullest." Though I should note that comes from my least favorite gospel account due to it being written the furthest away from the events, as well as taking the most poetic license. Outside of religious connotations, forgiveness is life-giving. It also allows you to live your life beyond what has happened to you or what you've done in your past. I've been forgiven much, and I'll still have more to go. Though it's tough for me to forgive the church for the abuses it committed against me. Church trauma is a very real thing. It isn't often talked about due to the status quo and the power that it has enjoyed for a very long time. There has recently been a large spread of an infographic made by the social media community creators Your Favorite Heretics. This is an infographic that describes what church trauma looks like. I'll touch on a few of these, but not all, as that's not what we're solely talking about today. Mental health abuse, it says, told that you need to be delivered from your addiction/mental illness, instructed to pray, fast, read scriptures when you need professional help, dismiss your emotions because God is in control, saying therapy is not of God because it means you think that God's not capable of healing you. I'll share another slide with you, but you can find these on Your Favorite Heretics Facebook page back on April 18th. For fear-driven theology, it says, hell is used as a fear tactic to keep you in the church or to keep you Christian. Exploring other hell theology means that you're denying God. Agree with what we believe, or you can find another church. Doctrine is pushed over love, and your salvation can be lost and is dependent on your strict obedience. Now, I'm sorry for reading something off that you can easily find and read yourselves, but I thought it was important to share those signs as this is relevant not only to Midnight Mass, but to understanding this podcast as a whole. Like I said earlier, I'm not only a survivor of church trauma, I also used to hurt others too. You can see both main characters, Father Paul and Riley, suffer from different forms of church trauma, but it's still church trauma. Father Paul, it's not revealed until the end, used that trauma to fuel his delusion of eternal life with his forbidden love and his secret daughter. Riley shrugs off some of the abuse that Father Paul is continuing to place on him as well. Riley doesn't want to say the prayers. He knows that the way out of his alcoholism is through rational recovery and not putting it on some higher power to deliver him from it. Now, that is one problem that I have with most recovery programs, is that the religious aspect of them, it, like other mental illnesses, which addiction is one of, is not fully understood by religions, and instead those who suffer are made to come to God or a higher power out of fear. So when they aren't delivered from this burden, it's said to be God's will. However, it robs a person of personal responsibility. And the church tends to do that a lot. It allows people to blame circumstances, other people, or other things for that which they are responsible for. The scene in the rec center after Riley is turned, where Father Paul insists that he doesn't have any guilt and brings up the passage from Hebrews. We know that's not true. We just watched an episode before how Father Paul struggled. In this scene, we are watching church trauma at work. Father Paul is pushing his guilt away in an effort to do good. He knows he still feels it. And even when he's picking up the Bible, he pushes it to Bev, who told him of this passage. He's manipulating Riley to forgive himself. Riley must forgive himself anyway, but it's after this moment. It's not there. I believe that Riley does forgive himself when he's standing over his parents. That Riley resists feeding on his parents on his own. He stands in personal responsibility and does what he feels is the responsible thing, to wait until sunrise. Church trauma can manifest in different ways. Some people use that pain to close themselves off and become self-righteous, as Bev did. She couldn't accept what she did, even to the end. It can look like Riley, someone who feels that there is no way forward and just rolling with the tides, as he couldn't forgive himself for what he did. It can look like Father Paul, still hiding it and using it in destructive ways and trying to put silver linings on them. It can look like Riley's parents, two extremes of putting on a fake smile or shunning. Church trauma is real and requires serious care and help. It causes mental illness and should have its own Mayo Clinic article as well. If you are suffering from church trauma, please seek help. There are communities out there of people who have deconstructed, which is the term that most people use when they have left the Christian faith, or have stayed in it and are trying to reform it. But oftentimes, you would need to seek a real therapist, as healthy norms are tough to distinguish after such trauma. Trust me, I know. I am also seeing a therapist for this. I am also one who has suffered much church trauma. And finally, we come to catharsis. One of the biggest pieces that I'm learning in script writing class this semester is to write from your wounds. Write from your wounds. Not only does this provide its own form of catharsis, but it also makes a very compelling story. Mike Flanagan said about Midnight Mass that it was a passion project. On a BuzzFeed Burning Questions video, his wife, Kate Siegel, gave away an Easter egg that Midnight Mass was a novel in Hush. On the Netflix making of video, Flanagan describes that it was something even before he had a career in storytelling. He also goes on to talk about how Riley was his avatar in the story. The catharsis of living through other characters and learning through narrative is a human experience. It's why we read, watch, consume, and create media. It is to make our world and ourselves better people. I honestly love stories and storytelling. It's the reason why I don't want my podcast babies to die. I love talking about stories. I love telling stories. I love writing stories. I love filming stories. As you heard me talk about Hill House, Bly Manor, and now Midnight Mass, Mike Flanagan is an amazing storyteller. I think there is something in what he said in the Netflix making of that he wanted the two parts of himself to come together. That was the conflict that elevated the story. It was his church trauma that he either was acknowledging or coming to view in this work. I feel like the questions that we are left with from this piece can help those of us who are survivors, as well as those who are seeking to forgive. There is catharsis to be had. As Kathy likes to often say, communication is key. I encourage you, if you do listen to me ramble on about stories, to find your catharsis. For me, it's doing these podcasts, and photography and cinematography. This is why I encourage you now at the end of my shows to be yourself. Because that's all you can be. Don't try to fit yourself into the molds that others have for you. You can't be that. You can only be yourself. You have your own style, and it will manifest in different ways. Maybe you, like me, enjoy photography. And if we were to go to take pictures of the same subject, we'd come out with different results because we see them differently. Our catharsis moments will look different, but we can find healing through them nonetheless. Your catharsis moments may help others find healing too. They may not. That's not up to you. Yours is only to seek your own path. Lead when necessary, but your path is your own. Don't make it the path for others. You just sometimes intersect and run parallel with them. So, on to a happier note, my saint of show. I'm definitely going with Lisa for this one, for recognizing the major hurdle to forgiveness, and finally acknowledging and knowing that she couldn't go back to her parents, and thus her old life at the end, even if it meant ridding herself of the vampire's gift. So, Saint Lisa. Now, don't forget to join the conversation. You can do so on Facebook, Instagram, and our website, patronsaintsofpopculture.org. If you'd like your Saint of Show shared, please let us know either in our DMs or comment on the prompt that may be posted to social media the next time I come up with something. And remember, if you want to help out, please shoot me a message. Remember to review and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget, be yourself. It's all you got, and it's all you can be.